Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, are we on? I see you as a speaker right now, Cory. How you doing, bud?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you good, loud and clear. Thank you. How's it going tonight, man?
Good, man. Good.
Good. Thank you for hopping on and such short notice. I do appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I wanted to just talk about, just in general, pretty much where we are with the JFK assassination. Now, Cory, I know you're a scholar at this, and you have a lot to share with the incoming audience that's going to be joining us later on. But yeah, just from a standpoint for me in general, I look at the whole thing. Here we are, what, almost 62 years later, and I just it just baffles me that it is so swept under the rug by so many people in just our nation. I mean, it was a assassination in broad daylight that literally changed every fiber of our country. And it really, I mean, the snowball today, I mean, it just, you feel the effects of it. And I know you're really passionate about this, Cory, and you've been studying this for, like you mentioned to me, it's pretty much your life. And yeah, I just want to get your thoughts about my little opening statement there.
Sure. You're absolutely correct. It's the day America ended, the traditional America. We were co-opted by a foreign nation with the help of treasonous accomplices here at home. And yeah, the rest is history, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, what's crazy is, post all, November 22nd, 1963, how, they want us to stick to one narrative about the lone gunman theory and the BS, that's the Warren Commission report. But if you look at it, post that, with all the wild theories coming in from, the James Files of the world, the Greer shooting from the front, the Jackie was involved with it, you name it. There's just so many wild theories. It's kind of, it seems to me that that's what they want us to do, is just chase around each other and just kind of be caught up in the forest and just be lost in this whole thing.
Yeah, they can't have people know the real truth behind anything, So one thing I have to say is that, really, to put the assassination in context, like, you can't just study the assassination and come to understand the assassination. You have to really absorb the totality of the 20th century. For me, the study of the assassination goes back to 1895 and 1896, Basel, Switzerland, Theodor Herzl, the first Zionist Congress. That was where the plot to take over the world started, plain and simple. And I would say by 1933, America was pretty much toast. They already had their people on the Supreme Court. They had people in Congress. Henry Morgenthau, Secretary of Treasury, who wanted to fucking kill all the Germans after the war. Like, these are disgusting people who took over our government. And this was, to me, done by 33. And so World War II was a Zionist war. Hitler didn't want war. But beyond that, when you study World War II, it'll eventually lead you to some of the characters that pop up in Kennedy. Guys like Tibor Rosenbaum and guys like George Mandel, excuse me, who all connect through Permindex, which is really like a central nexus everyone ignores today. I mean, they mention it, but they don't understand its role as really an assassination factory that was fully operational before Kennedy and long after Kennedy. So
yeah, it definitely applies to today.
And you can connect all those guys in Permindex and CMC all to the strategy attention and all the Gladio stuff in Italy, right? So like, that was all funded through the same mechanisms,
Yeah. I mean, And when it comes to just the whole, I would just say global aspect of things, the gaslighting in general from our government, I mean, I agree with you about starting back in that particular time period, but I'm talking about just, when it comes to our country, just in general, which I do believe, what we talked about last night, and the documentation that you sent me last night really opened up my eyes to a lot of things. And, I do believe that, that's pretty much the linchpin with things. But aside from that, and I just want to go to the other side, because I know you've been studying, and a lot of the community really bases it on, the CIA or LBJ or those other side things because, ties to the Vietnam War and this and that. Um, what would your take be on those people who are super, super heavy into the CIA aspect of things, like the Morleys and the
Right.
different people?
Yeah, they work for the CIA. So, I swear to God, if Morley doesn't work for the CIA, I will fucking kiss his ass in Macy's front window, as my dad used to say. Like that fucking guy. And when he used one word, I saw him in a Twitter post like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and he used one word that told me everything I needed to know about the guy. And I've had personal communications with this guy. He is um, not an ally of mine, I'll say that. But he used a word that told me everything I need to know about Jefferson Morley. He said that the government needs to put forth enough documents so that the researchers out there can come to consensus. Consensus, okay?
That'll never happen.
That was the nail in the coffin of Jefferson Morley for me. Because well, that was the word you kept hearing about COVID, right? Oh, they have to come to consensus, right? Consensus is
Mhm.
bullshit, all right? Consensus is nonsense. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and how can one come to consensus when you have the Gerald Posners of the world? You have, people that are just dead set on what they believe. Nobody is ever going to come to a consensus.
right. And so
You know, and the way I look at that too is that, again, if it just goes to show our government thinks, how stupid we are, specifically just based alone on that Warren Commission report and the fact that, the sitting president at the time, Johnson and Hoover, were just like, well, we're going to convince the public that we had the lone shooter, and everybody's going to accept it. And, my grandparents, and I'm sure your grandparents and parents, they all bought into that like it was, literally gospel. You know what I mean?
right. I was fortunate. My dad was pretty down to earth, and he knew bullshit when he saw it. You know, he died before the real answers about 9/11 started coming out, so he didn't
Mhm.
really get exposed to a lot of that. But I remember showing him one video on 9/11, and I asked him about the core columns, and he's like, you got a good point. I don't know why the core columns fell like that. And that was it. That was the whole 9/11 conversation with my dad. But he was fully on board with the government's full of shit. They're always going to lie to you and steal your money. And like that was my dad was awesome. Like in as far as how he approached that kind of stuff, So, but
Yeah.
the here's the thing. I find that the documents themselves are so overwhelming that people get lost and they end up going down trails that lead nowhere. Um, and it's really you have to read a lot of documents to really be able to have enough of a map of what's going on to be able to be reading one document about say the Cubans, and then all of a sudden it's got a reference to something that has nothing to do with the Cubans on the other end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
and a lot of people just don't have that that breadth of experience with the documents, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
and I was gonna tell just to cut in real quick, and my apologies for interrupting, but I made a point yesterday that those files are just they're full of so much stuff, but they lead you down a dead end. And I was reading the thing about Underhill, and then the next document there was another Cuba thing that popped up. I'm like, how in the hell are these people going to be able to line this stuff up?
right. And so to kind of answer your question about Morley and them's approach to the CIA stuff, to me that's a big waste of fucking time. Like, yes, the CIA was involved. What was the point of contact? The point of contact was JM Wave, Joe Anitas and Shackley and Morales. Obviously, those guys were all in fucking Dealey Plaza. And so that's the entryway. And Angleton is the fucking master of spycraft, and He was the head of Western Hemisphere at the time. So, he was in on it. But see, here's the thing with Dulles. Dulles was, and this is my speculative opinion on Dulles. When you get to that top level, you understand what the fuck's going on, and you don't necessarily need to know how the sausage is getting made. You know what I mean? You don't, you know enough to know you don't need to know anything, right? So guys like Dulles, but here I contradict myself here, because Dulles was ultra aware of very important aspects of Oswald's life that he made sure to be present for during Warren Commission testimony so he could intervene when so needed. And so Dulles was clued in on all kinds of stuff in Oswald's past that he shouldn't have been clued in on. And you can tell by when and how he interrupts, particularly Robert Oswald, who's such an idiot.
Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
That motherfucker said so many contradictory things in his testimony that he really is key in like discerning that Oswald is in like multiple places all the time, like nonstop. I can't find there's no period of Oswald's life that's not in direct conflict with something, from 45 all the way till my studies so far is till the end of the Marines. I'm going to go on to Russia once I get done with my book on the book I'm working on now is going to end at the Marines, like when he leaves the Marines on September 11th, 59.
Right.
So, and after that, I'll get to Russia. But up until then, like there's this nonstop, like for fucking, how long is that? 20 years, something like that, 15 years. It's goddamn immense, And then when you dig into like Marguerite Oswald, she lied about her history from about late 41 through mid 44 up until she moves into the Victor Street property in Dallas. And so basically she fucking gives two addresses. This is the most fascinating stuff, like way more than anything to do with directly with the assassination, because the study of Oswald is a totally separate story. It has nothing to do with the assassination at all. Right. So it's a pre-Cold War plot to get a spy in the Soviet Union that obviously worked. You know what I mean? So when you look at Oswald, particularly, like I said, 45 is where it starts. Benbrook Common School, but he's also in Boston. Then from there, the next major contradictions are at the 101 San Saba address, where Georgia Bell, the neighbor, clearly describes the short, fat, ugly Marguerite who wears the glasses, who's a nurse. Do you know when Marguerite went to go to nursing school? I don't have a fucking clue.
I have no idea.
Yeah, nobody does. It doesn't exist. There's no point in time in Marguerite Oswald's life when she could have gone to be a fucking nurse, right? And so this is where it brings me to like what I'm looking into now. I'm looking into like the identity of this other Marguerite, who there's a guy named.
Well, what's interesting? What's interesting is that you made a point about the second Marguerite, which really kind of opened my eyes to the whole thing. I've been kind of on the mainstream studying this whole thing, as you know, from my posts and stuff like that. But when you suggested to me about the double Oswalds, and I told you how that was so important for me to look into, and was watching an interview with her, and she had no idea, if Lee was left-handed or right-handed. And these are just like simple questions to know about your child that you would be able to answer off the cusp. You wouldn't even have to think about it.
Right.
And that just adds up, man.
And also, like when you go through the documents through all of Lee's life, you get some weird contradictions. And obviously you have this other Marguerite and other Lee who actually literally introduced himself. I have no less than 6 incidents where he introduced himself as Harvey, not Lee. And so I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But when it comes to Oswald and this duplicate scheme, to me, it's really not even that outlandish. You know what I mean? Like today, they can fake identities and fake backgrounds, and it's all computer based. Back then, it wasn't. Everything was on paper, and actual real spies had to go and look at what you were doing and pull your phone lines and like all that stuff, right? So they had to pull off these body double operations in, counter espionage situations. So to me, it's really not even that shocking of a thing. The thing that really gets me is who the fuck are these kids to each other? and so you have a statement by Milton Kurian, Dr. Milton Kurian. And Milton Kurian is like a thorn in the side of the Warren Commission, because Oswald's not supposed to have gone to the youth house till April 16th, but he actually was interviewed by Milton Kurian on March 27th, 2 weeks before he was ever supposed to have been picked up. So we have a weird contradiction here. But when he's talking to Milton Kurian made a statement to John Armstrong, and he said that Harvey is how he introduced himself, number one. And Harvey told him that he had trouble when he went to school and trouble going to school, because when he would get into a new community, his brother or one of his brothers, knowing he wasn't going to go to school, would go to school in his stead. And so when you think about that, Robert Oswald is 5.5 years older than Lee. He could never in a million years be a 16-year-old getting away with going to a fucking 11-year-old's class. Never. Not possible. Yeah. So what brother is he talking about? There's no other brothers. So this to me is the strongest circumstantial evidence that the relationship between the two of them is that they're brothers. And that would explain a lot. That would explain why Lillian covered for this fucking scheme. That would explain why Robert covered for the scheme. Why they kept John Pick out of the loop, I don't know, but they sure as fuck did, because his testimony at the Warren Commission, he tells him when he shows him the Bronx Zoo photo, and who was it, Albert Jenner, shows him the Bronx Zoo photo, he's like, I don't know who the fuck that is. That's not my brother. So, and then again, you see, and the weird thing is, because they tried to put these two guys together in Thanksgiving 62 after John Pick hadn't seen his brother in almost 10 years. And so he hadn't seen his brother since like early 53. And then they put these two guys together in the same fucking room. And John Pick, when he testifies to the Warren Commission, he's like, his facial features were different. His eyes were set back. He had less hair. He was way thinner than I remember him. And then he made statements later on that was like, I never would have recognized him if nobody told me that was my brother. And then when he signed John Pick's address book and put his new information in there, he signed it Harvey. It's like, what are you? None of this ever comes out in the mainstream conspiracy theorist bullshit from Morley and DiEugenio or any of these fucks. So you gotta forgive me. I hate these people with a passion. They've done nothing but muddy the water for 60 years on something that shouldn't have taken that fucking long. The documents that lead directly to Ferrie being on the fucking Knoll is like, they've been there for 40 years. There's no excuse there's no excuse for people overlooking basic shit.
That's interesting. And, one thing I want to just kind of in relation to what you're just talking about with Oswald, I was looking at, obviously everybody knows the alias Heidel situation there. What's your take on the Heidel thing when it comes to at the Tippett scene with his wallet being there and just his alias?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. What other alias was used in the setup of Oswald that was the name of a Marine that he was with at Santa Ana? Do you know?
Was that Heidel? I'm just
no. It was Osborne. Okay, so
Osborne. Okay,
you have this is okay. So this is how I put together Kerry Thornley's overwhelming involvement in the setup. Okay, because when you realize that it was Kerry Thornley who was identified by Douglas Jones as having had the flyers printed for Oswald, right? He used the name of Leon Osborne. Okay,
yes.
So Osborne and Heidel, these are two guys who were in the fucking Marines with Oswald, but they were also in the Marines with Kerry Thornley. So actually, Kerry Thornley was not in the Marines with Osborne, but Kerry Thornley had a handler, okay? And Kerry Thornley's handler was, what the fuck was that guy's name? Jim, you know it. What the fuck? One of the guys who was connected to the Lieutenant Ballantyne out at Santa Ana. It'll hit me in a minute. Buddy Simcoe. Okay, so Kerry Thornley was being handled by Buddy Simcoe, and Buddy Simcoe was. So here's the thing: when you come to understand the contacts that these guys had after the Marines, when they weren't necessarily friends in the first place, and you realize Buddy Simcoe, he gets into the Marines, and literally, like right after he gets all done with the basic stuff, they put him in basically Marine intelligence, which I think is G2, but he was allegedly just a filing clerk. and he spent his entire fucking Marine career as a filing clerk. So allegedly he befriends Kerry Thornley out at Santa Ana. And then Kerry Thornley is a whole other conversation, but Kerry Thornley and Bud Simcoe, they maintain contact while Kerry Thornley gets out of the Marines and goes to Whittier, California. And then Kerry Thornley goes from Whittier, California. He shows up in New Orleans, allegedly February 61. I don't buy that. I believe it was more like January 61, because that is when the Bolton Ford incident happened. And at this point in time, I've become convinced that the Bolton Ford incident was Kerry Thornley and Lawrence Howard. And we know they had a relationship because Kerry Thornley wrote his goddamn confession letter to Garrison, 50-page confession letter to Garrison. You got to read this thing. It's a confession letter, straight up. And he even mentions Leopoldo in his damn confession letter. That confession letter is the best. It's the best. It's a top 5 document, period. That, the Frank Chilona document, are like as good as it gets. So Kerry Thornley, this fucking guy. So he lied to the Warren Commission about his involvement in the Marines. He is such a key person in this. He was the guy setting up Oswald all over New Orleans, right? So you know about the Bernier incident on the street on August 9th, they get in the fight and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a split second that it was actually Oswald who had the initial meeting with Bernier, when he's at his store or whatever it was. I believe 100% it was Kerry Thornley, and they were setting Oswald up because Kerry Thornley is in New Orleans at a time he's not supposed to be, right? The Douglas Jones flyer incident is when, at a time, a 3-month gap, when Kerry Thornley is supposed to be out in Whittier, California. You see, Oswald comes to fucking New Orleans in April of 63, at the end of April 63, like the 21st or something like that.
Yeah.
And Kerry Thornley, I don't think we're supposed to know this, but there is an actual 2-week overlap between when Oswald arrives and Kerry Thornley leaves. And this is when we get the first round of sightings of the two of them together at the Bourbon House. So then you get Kerry Thornley allegedly goes to Whittier, California. And he does go to Whittier, California at some point, because out there he meets up with Lauren Hall and Warren Reynolds and Carl McIntyre and a whole bunch of these right-wing fucking lunatics.
Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Who are all into what I'm talking about, the whole right-wing clique of the fucking thing. And so they're all meeting up in Whittier, California at these national states' rights party meetings, which is a little weird. So all those guys, other than Lauren Hall and Kerry Thornley, the rest of those guys were just kind of hanger-ons. They weren't really, the feds had been onto them and been putting them out of business and all that stuff. But Kerry Thornley then, so we know he was there at some point. And when you go and track his job history, he was supposed to be out there for like 3 months. He only had jobs for like 2 weeks out of that 3 months, right? So that falls apart. And then when you have all the Oswald sightings in New Orleans during this time where he's talking about communism and doing all this weird shit, right?
Yeah.
That is not Oswald, okay? Not a fucking chance. Oswald, from what I can tell, was being kept at like arm's length. The only 2 people who I believe that Oswald had any contact with in New Orleans was Kerry Thornley and Clay Shaw. And we know Clay Shaw had contact with Oswald because Clay Shaw showed up at the house of Lillian Moret looking for Oswald, and she identified it as Clay Shaw in a photograph. So we have that connection there. What they were doing, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation about the Ochsner Clinic and all that cancer bullshit and the Judy Very Baker nonsense.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence for any of that, like zero. Like I've looked, there's none. It would be nice to be exciting, a nice little spy story there, but I can find nothing there. Zip. So I don't know what to say about that stuff, but there is that connection with Clay Shaw.
So real quick, and that's a really fascinating thing you just brought up, because I have been studying Jolly West for a while, and I guess I've just been looking into a lot of fodder, I guess, when it comes to stories about Jolly West. But of course, I'm sure you read the same things I have, but talking about injecting Ruby with cancer, and how he was just involved in heavily sedating an elephant and basically having him overdose, and goes all the way down to Timothy McVeigh with the Oklahoma City bombing and all that. Now, with your research on Jolly West, was that pretty much propaganda BS? That a lot of that stuff that's attached to him, or was there some validity to it?
I believe so, because I can tell you that there's at least 3 or 4 references to Jack Ruby having had cancer going back to like the late 50s. And one person who they interviewed in the Jack Ruby file said that they knew he was battling cancer when he was still in Chicago. And that was like in 46 or something like that, right? So pictures of Jack Ruby, when you look at Jack Ruby in the year and 2 years, there's a mugshot of him. He got arrested like in 61 or something like that. And then you look at Jack Ruby in 63. That guy lost like 75 pounds. Easy. That guy's skinny compared to how he looked, unless it's his brother, because Samuel Ruby is a major key player in this game. And no one ever talks about Samuel Ruby. So,
yeah, it's a name I have not heard of Samuel Ruby very often. I've heard the name, but I haven't, affiliated with this whole thing.
Yeah, Samuel Ruby was the guy photographed in the hallway of the police department. That was not Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby left to go to Galveston. So Jack Ruby seen in Galveston, I forget if it's like a sporting goods store or a hardware store, but he was alleged to be buying a gun, but he was at the counter looking at a gun. That completely corresponds with the blonde woman who was seen at the Alamo Motel on Saturday night when David Ferrie and them are in Galveston, right? So this is the Galveston trip, and the whole Houston alibi story is so crucial to understanding where people were and what they were doing. Because David Ferrie allegedly didn't go to the assassination, and he went on this stupid trip to the ice skating rink, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all alibi shit. Like, he was in Dallas, and he went from Dallas to Hammond, Louisiana. He was in Hammond the whole weekend except for Saturday night when he drove down to Galveston to meet up with Sergi Arcacha and Leighton Martins and Alvin Bobouf, who were the ones who went to the Winterland. So the Winterland's owned by Lyndon Johnson. This is something that no one's ever figured out. Well, they didn't really have much opportunity to figure out, because the information I got on this, I got from the Winterland fucking Facebook group, which only started in 2018. And so I got fucking 100 pictures from that place. I got stories from all kinds of people who were there. And luckily, I got one story from Richard Rowland, who's the son of, Chuck Rowland, who's the roller skating, the ice skating guy at the rink, right? And so he straight up says Lyndon Johnson and the Johnson family enterprise, via their relationship with Mary Boots Roberts and Ronnie Roberts, were the ones who built the Winterland. And then when you dig into Mary Boots Roberts, you'll find that she was born Mary Calta-Garone. So like I was saying earlier, having like a wide enough scope to see when things correlate, I had kind of like this is early in my research. I'd only been doing it maybe a year. And then I was already on to Jack Valenti and his role in the assassination early, because he lied about where he was. And I caught that really early on. But I'm digging into Jack Valenti, and then Jack Valenti had a sister, and his sister would go on to become Lorraine Valenti Dinerstein. But before she was a Dinerstein, she was Lorraine Calta-Garone. And so when I'm digging into the Winterland, I find Mary Boots Roberts was really Mary Calta-Garone. And I'm like, holy shit. I never heard of this name in my life, but now I got 2 Calta-Garones in 2 different aspects of the assassination. Well, what does it turn out? It turns out that fucking Jack Valenti's sister married the first cousin of Mary Boots Roberts. And his name was Vincent Calta-Garone Jr. And Vincent Calta-Garone Jr. is the short tramp and the real Raoul, who was involved with Martin Luther King stuff. So that took me a couple of years to put all that together. But when you dig into Jack Valenti and his family and the mob ties they have and all that stuff, it's like, holy shit. It's a whole study. I could write a whole book just on Jack Valenti and the Winterland and Lyndon Johnson and the relationship to the skating rink.
You mentioned Johnson, and I sent you a quick little dabble of a show sheet earlier today about I was going to mention Johnson, and I've been nowhere near as serious as you are about studying this case. I mean, I've been studying for since college, and I'm 45 now. So, but it's just when I've been researching it, it just always screams back to how much of a pompous ass Johnson was,
right?
But also like you did make a point last night that you really didn't think that he was involved in this whole thing, but I just have questions about that. I have questions that the guy was hungry for power. He was never going to get elected. I mean, never going to get elected. I mean, and the whole Bobby Baker situation, and it just seems to me that if he had played ball with the powers that be, that he had some sort of knowledge with this whole situation.
Well, see, it sounds very hypocritical when I say that he didn't have involvement, because I put his right-hand man, Jack Valenti, as the primary mover in the story. And then Cliff Carter, 100% he was involved. You know what I mean? He knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Johnson did. I don't think he knew it was coming, because he was, despite his pompousness and his arrogance, he was a puppet. He never won a fucking election. They were all stolen. And, people hide the fact that he was born and raised Jewish his whole fucking life until he gets into politics. Just like all of them do. They all once they get into politics, like Ron DeSantis, were born and raised a Jew, and all of a sudden he's in politics and he's not Jewish anymore. That's what these guys fucking do. And that's what Johnson did. And Johnson was loyal to Israel the whole time. I mean, he was there calling the shots when the Liberty was getting shot down and getting blown up. So, he said, I want that ship at the bottom of the ocean. It's like the guy was a traitor to this country. Kennedy was the last real president we had. And the jury's out on Trump, but Kennedy was the last real president we had. Everyone else has been at the behest of the Israeli lobby.
Yeah, and I have questions, with Henry Marshall and the whole line of murders that went down from the allegedly. I mean, you might have a different take on the line of murders that went down from Johnson and
Johnson's hit list of 8, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so let me comment on this real quick, because what kind of tipped me off to that fact that I believe Jack Valenti was more involved in that stuff than Malcolm Wallace or anybody else. Even when Jack was in the Motion Picture Association of America and all that big time stuff he was doing afterwards, all that shit is really good cover for a spook. And so, like, he was on the board of directors of TWA, so he can get flights off the record anywhere. He was on the board of directors of the YMCA, so he can go stay to YMCA anywhere across the country off record. You know what I mean? Like, this is like how these guys get around. All of these guys, go look, anybody you're interested in, like what their relationship to anything is, go look at what companies they're involved with and who else is on the board of directors. That's where the goods are found. And so, I had a real good point and I forgot it. What were we talking about? What was the question again?
We're talking about LBJ and his 8 hit list.
The hit list, right. So Jack Valenti, at the time that he's a board member of TWA, he catches a flight I forget from where to where. But after he gets off the flight, he files a police report. And it's been a long time since I've looked at this, so I'm probably going to butcher it, but I got it screenshotted around here somewhere. It's in one of my presentations. But he files a police report, and the police report, obviously, because he is who he is, and he mentions the president in the police report, it gets routed to the Secret Service, which gets routed to Johnson, because he leaves in 66, right? He's out the door by June of 66. And this is like before Johnson is out, I think before 68. And so this fucking police report, he files a police report that basically is talking about cufflinks, and that these cufflinks were stolen.
Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
And that 5 of 8 and 6 of 8, because they were like, that's the size, 5/8 of an inch and 6/8 of an inch, and that these cufflinks were stolen, and that they are no longer in circulation because they contain the president's seal, right? And so I'm like, wait a minute. He knows he files a police report. This is getting back to Johnson. And then he just said, and I looked into these cufflinks, they don't exist. The cufflinks were all donned in millimeters that Johnson had issued, not in inches. And so when he said, and I wasn't even really intending on going down this path, but when he said in this police report, 5 of 8 and 6 of 8 are out, and they're out of circulation, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? This sounds to me like a secret coded message sent to Johnson. And I need to correlate that flight with the deaths of 5 and 6 on the list. But that struck me as like, holy shit, that's unusual. And what else did he have? He had an Omega watch with a red sweep dial. I don't know, maybe that's some coders for something, but yeah, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, and I mean, with his dog nature that he had, I mean, like the guy was a real jackass. I mean, like I mean, I'm not talking about Valenti
Right.
specifically because I don't know enough information, but I'm talking about Johnson. I mean, the fact that he was caught crying in Air Force One the night that he was caught by. Can you elaborate about that?
Yeah, it was Godfrey
About
McHugh. So
yeah.
Godfrey McHugh is one of the first people back to Air Force One after Johnson and his little group that left from Parkland. But he gets on there and he can't find Johnson anywhere. And eventually, he about 15 minutes later, before the rest of the crowd shows up, he finds Johnson in the shower in the bathroom attached to the president's office on Air Force One. And it's not on, but he's crouched down in the shower, like sitting down, and he's like bawling, crying. And he says, "It's a plot. It's a plot. They're going to get us all."
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't believe he was in, because here's the deal. You want your next president to have any information on this thing at all? Maybe if there was somebody screwed up and left the trail to him and he has information, he could talk. But if he doesn't know anything, he can't talk. And so I don't think having him know anything is an operational liability.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this: do you think Valente actually briefed Johnson post the assassination, saying, "Hey, look, this is what happened. You and I are close. Just keep it to the
Well,
vest."
here's the thing. Johnson definitely knew, and this kind of something happened between Johnson and Valenti, because something got recorded on the Air Force One recordings. And Valenti goes to Johnson and he submitted like a request. And he requested the original raw, uncut versions of the audio from Air Force One on the flight, from Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Johnson wouldn't give it up. And Johnson was pissed. You could tell by the answers that Johnson wrote on this response to his memo that Johnson was pissed, because Valenti came to him, I believe, under the guise that he needed them for a reporter who was writing a book. And I don't believe that's the case at all. That might have been what he was saying. But the tone of that letter from Valenti and the response from Johnson tell me there was a lot more going on, and there's a lot more on those tapes that were recorded than anybody knows about. And so here's the thing you have to understand about Valenti. So he met Johnson in 1956. He handles Johnson's like election campaigns through his company, Weekly and Valenti, down in Houston. And Valenti's gay. At some point, they're hooking up. Okay, there are confidential informants who are providing information to the FBI that Valenti's banging all kinds of dudes. Johnson being one of them for sure. Valenti and Johnson were seen like coming out of Johnson's room, like the White House fucking main bedroom, at like 6 a.m, and they were both like half naked. So weird shit was going on between those guys, right? So that's a weird relationship going on there. But the relationship between 56 and 60 develops to where Valenti picks up the Kennedy election campaign, right? That was run by Valenti's company, Weekly and Valenti. And so by 63, the relationship between him and Johnson is like, it's his right-hand man. Like literally that's the guy, that's the guy he runs to every time something happens, okay? As soon as the assassination happens from Parkland, you have Jack Valenti, who ends up at Parkland, where he's the one who planted the original magic bullet before it got swapped by the FBI. And then he's grabbed from the basement of the Parkland Hospital by Cliff Carter. He says, "Johnson needs you." Then there's some obfuscation here about the ride from Parkland to Air Force One. I need to go back over this data, but I remember there being some conflicts in where people were supposed to be in what cars and this and that between Parkland and Air Force One. So Valenti, the split second that Johnson gets sworn in, 100% of people who wanted to talk to Johnson had to go through Valenti. He, in my opinion, he instantly became Johnson's handler in the White House. And I forgot to mention, Jack Valenti works for the CIA. And how do we know he works for the CIA? Because in the Jack Valenti file, which is like a golden fucking gem of files that's not even associated with the Kennedy documents, it clearly indicates that, who was it? It was Walt Rostow. He had a memo sent to him about people who were working in government already who had to have their payrolls transferred to the White House. And it said that the named individual, which was Jack Valenti, needed to have his payroll transferred from a quote federal agency to the White House. Okay, for the last like 8 years, fucking Valenti's running Weekly and Valentia down in Houston. He's not associated with government at all. So what federal agency did he have to have his payroll transferred from? There's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one, the CIA. Not only that, when they made the Manchurian Candidate, this is interesting. So Jack Valenti's in the war. He's a veteran, allegedly, right? So, but that's a whole other conversation. But he, oh shit, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'm really tired. I've been working on my book all fucking day.
Oh, no problem, no problem. You were talking about Valente being in the war, and let's see, the backtrack.
Yeah, so he gets put in charge. He becomes the liaison to Hollywood and the fucking CIA for the making of the Manchurian Candidate. And this is before he's ever in the White House. This is right after he really. What year was the Manchurian Candidate? Like 50. Let me see.
Was that 60 or was that? I think it was post Alamo.
It was 62.
62.
It was 62.
Gotcha.
So 62, he's not working for the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so who gets him involved with that project? A guy named Arthur Krim. Mm-hmm. And Arthur Krim. So when the Liberty was bombed by Israel, Arthur Krim's wife, Matilda Krim, was sleeping in the White House because she was banging Lyndon Johnson. The day she was there, the day the Liberty got bombed. Mm-hmm. And her husband are Israeli spies. I forgot to mention. So those are the people who got Valenti connected between the CIA and fucking Hollywood. He also was like buddy with Lew Wasserman, who ran Hollywood for like decades. Lew Wasserman was the man in Hollywood, and him and Jack Valenti were tight as it gets, because he was the leading person who pushed for Jack Valenti to take over the Motion Picture Association of America after he left the White House in 1966. And why did he leave the White House? Because that all connects right back to Vincent Caltagirone Jr. from the Winterland and all that stuff, the Short Tramp. Because Vincent Caltagirone Jr. in February of 1966, he's outed in the newspaper as having been the roommate of a guy named Jacques Mosler. And Jacques Mosler was like this rich socialite down in Miami, suspected homosexual, because everyone was gay back then. I don't understand it. Everyone's gay all the time. I don't fucking get it. But anyway, Jacques Mosler gets murdered. He gets stabbed to death. He's stabbed like 50 something times. His wife, who's like 50 years younger than him, Candy Mosler, she's having an affair with her nephew, Melvin Powers. There's a big trial about all this stuff. And it comes out midway through the trial, Vincent Caltagirone Jr. is fucking Jacques Mosler's roommate. This hits the front page of the papers, where they straight up say he's the former brother-in-law of Jack Valenti. Okay. Instantly at this point, Jack Valenti's role in the White House, it changes from, right-hand man who didn't really have a title to he becomes a policymaker. He becomes, he's always had a contact. It's funny, from the time he got into the White House with Lyndon Johnson, his contact at the CIA, which was one of his primary roles, was Richard Helms. Him and Richard Helms. Yep. That's the direct fucking line right there.
Absolutely.
So but the last 3 months that fucking Valenti is in the White House, he's doing policy stuff that he never did before. People are having to like reroute and meet with him, who previously met with like Moyers. And so then he gets his top secret security clearance May 26th of 1966, a week before he leaves the White House. So why is he just now getting his top secret security clearance a week before he leaves the White House? To go work in Hollywood, which he never did. He stayed in DC. He ran the Motion Picture Association of America from DC. He was the living proof that the CIA controlled Hollywood. It was the censorship industrial complex before we had the modern censorship industrial complex. That was Jack Valenti for 40 years.
That's crazy. Do you still think that the CIA does run Hollywood right now?
Oh God, yes. You think that, dude? It's all propaganda.
Yeah. And
when you come to really understand propaganda, you understand all propaganda has to come from a centralized source. And in America, that's the CIA.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, that would explain why there's not too many Kennedy type movies that are out. I know that David Mamet was trying to work on a film, and they keep blocking him from making the film. He actually had a script about 10 years ago with Leonardo DiCaprio that he was going to come out about the Marcello connection, which obviously I'm not big on the Marcello connection, but still, just having more stories out there, I think, to get people's interest available, there's some suppression there, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. But no, the Marcello connection is definitely real. I mean, David Ferrie worked for him.
Right. Right.
And like, yeah, then when you get into like Thomas Beckham and Thomas Beckham's statements to the HSCA.
Sonesta Travel Pass is the most rewarding way to travel. Sign up at sonesta.com for instant savings, bonus points, and perks like early check-in and late checkout, room upgrades, and free stays. Choose from 1,100 hotels across 13 brands and unlock their best rates when you book with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at sonesta.com. That's sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Where he met with who did he meet with? He met with Vincent Marcello, Roswell Thompson, bunch of Cubans, and they gave him a package to take to Lawrence Howard in Dallas. Right?
Right.
That's all in his testimony, and it's true, and I 100% believe it. It 100% fits everything to a T.
Yeah, and I'm not specifically saying that he wasn't involved. I mean, I do believe he was involved, but I mean, there's a lot of theorists out there that talk about how he was the one that pulled all the strings, this and that, yada yada yada, and I just don't believe that. I mean,
yeah, I don't buy that either. These guys don't get their hands dirty. These guys are smart enough to know what not to know. You know what I mean?
yeah, and his character too. He liked to be quiet. I mean, like he handled business. He was a true mobster. That's who he was. He just was a true mobster, and I get that he was really pissed that Robert Kennedy, you know, threw him out in the jungle, basically, and
that story's so funny.
yeah, it's funny. It really is. But yeah, I mean, I get how pissed off at the Kennedys he was. But I mean, again, I mean, so the way I look at it is this. I mean, you have forms of levels. I'm sure you can agree with me that in this some sort of context. So you have levels to this thing. I think the mob was basically at the bottom when it came to levels. You had, the CIA, FBI, different things that were just higher tiers. And of course, what you talk about, which is the highest tier. But I mean, in
See, I
general,
disagree. There's tiers.
really,
This is more like a pie chart.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No,
It's like a Venn diagram, because you got to think. So this is where it all starts. 46 is, well, technically before that with Lucky Luciano during the war,
right?
Because who was it? Was it OSS at the time, or no? It was the Navy. The Navy approached Luciano about monitoring the docks because they knew the mob ran the docks, right? So that kind of kicked off. Well, actually, that's not even true. If you want to really be technical, you can go back to the 20s when the fucking the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs worked with fucking Arnold Rothstein, right? So, the government's always worked with the mob. It's always. I mean, there's a certain level of control there that they have to maintain. And so, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So,
well, I would love to hear your pie chart sometime, because I mean, I actually want to do another one of these with you because you're fascinating. I'd love to talk to you more, but anyways, going into what you were saying.
The important relationships are all surrounding Israel. 46, Bugsy Siegel, Reuven Daphne of the Haganah, sent there by Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion's in New York at this time, establishing relationships with Meyer Lansky. They set up the Sonborn Institute, the large-scale smuggling operation that basically, after the war, the Israelis, the pre-Israeli Zionists, as I call them, they wanted our surplus weapons from World War II to oust the Palestinians, and we wouldn't give it to them. So they set out on a 20-year fucking expedition of stealing all of our arms from various bunkers, like the Homa bunker, right? So the Homer bunker was one of 3 bunkers that David Ferrie was involved in burglarizing. And so that, and then you have references from Gary Ween to the Oxnard Armory in California. And even, this was a big operation. The Sonborn Institute lasted for like 20 years. And all those weapons, they say all the weapons that got stolen from the bunkers were going to the anti-Castro Cubans. Like, that's total bullshit. All those fucking weapons made their way through Bannister's office up to Virginia to a company called Interarmco, and then got sold to the fucking Israelis, or even given to the Israelis. Who the fuck knows? But all those weapons that they were stealing out of bunkers had nothing to do with the anti-Castro Cubans. The anti-Castro Cubans are the biggest red herring in all of Kennedy assassination research. Like, the only anti-Castro Cubans who were involved in the assassination were Emilio Santana and Sergio Arcacha, and that's it. And they were working for Marcello at the time. So there's not even an anti-Castro connection to the assassination period. So
yeah, this is interesting because this is very New Orleans central on this,
it's all about New Orleans.
And it's crazy. I just want to switch gears real quick before we go back to that. And again, I do respect you. I know you're tired and stuff, and we'll wrap it up here a little later. But I wanted to get your thoughts on just okay. I know your take on you don't think that Oswald was at the book depository, but from a grand scheme, so the story is that he leaves the book depository after shooting the president, which is just I mean, if you even hear the story, it's comical. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody hears it, and how somebody could say it with a straight face and believe it, it's just bullshit. I think about it, and let's just say he was at work that day, right? Just
right,
hypothetically,
right.
okay? Okay, you have to hide that rifle, right? You have to hide it, okay? Because the way they found it, it was in a way where it was hidden, and then you run down, you grab yourself a soda. You're not out of breath. You have
Well, that
Miriam
never
Jacob.
happened. That's myth.
Right, right. Well, let's just say hypothetically.
Sure.
This is the mainstream thing, but then he leaves, and then he goes on a bus, and then the bus. He gets off the bus. He goes, takes a cab, goes to his boarding house, changes, talks to the lady there, and then he randomly goes over and shoots a police officer, and then he goes to the movie theater, buys a bucket of popcorn, and hey, the police officers are going to come and arrest this guy. That sounds just implausible.
Right, right.
And so for me, looking at it, not only do I think that that's just a fairy tale, just like the Warren Commission report, but when I look at it, there had to have been a reason for Oswald to kill Tippett, and I'm like, there was just no logistical reason for him to do it. I mean, he just wouldn't have been like, yeah, I'm just going to kill this guy because I'm scared. Why would you, if you were going to assassinate a president, draw more attention to yourself, go kill a police officer, and then just jot casually over to a movie theater? I mean, how stupid do they think we are?
Right. So, have you seen any evidence that convinced you that Oswald was there that day? And if Oswald wasn't there that day, he couldn't have been there any day because someone was there going by the name Lee Harvey Oswald. That's a fact. But it sure as fuck was not Lee Harvey Oswald. The entire story of Oswald at the book depository completely fucking falls apart every turn. When you look at the ride to work from Buell Frazier and his sister both described Oswald as having shown up wearing a gray, more or less flannel wool type jacket and a tan shirt, both of them. But Oswald had to go home to get his jacket in that story, right? So Buell Frazier is a fucking liar and he's a bad one. And that whole story goes away because he didn't drive Oswald anywhere that day. Then you have the statements of Ed Shields to the HSCA. Ed Shields worked in the warehouse across the street, across Houston. He sees Buell Frazier pull up in the back and get out of his car and walk towards a book depository. He hears somebody call from inside the book depository and say, "Hey, Frazier, where's your rider?" Meaning, where's the guy you're driving to work? And Frazier calls out, "I dropped him off at the building." That doesn't match with his statements to everywhere else that he exited the vehicle with a package under his armpit, right? Like,
Right,
so
right.
that's out the window. So fucking Frazier's a liar. And they were setting him up as a second patsy. Clear as day. They dropped his name at the Sportsdrome rifle range, the 303 rifle that they took off him.
Right.
I am at this point convinced beyond all doubt that the rifle they took off of Buell Frazier, the Enfield 303, was the rifle that was used to shoot Kennedy. That was
Now,
definitely it.
now, Fritz had a signed confession for Frazier. Is that correct?
I don't know too much about that, but they should have gone through with that because if they did, we would be none the wiser. This would be a big mystery. We don't know why he killed Kennedy, right? So none of the spy stuff ever would have come out. None of the Oswald history stuff would have come out. Oswald would have just been some guy who worked at the book depository with the assassin, right? So they should have set up Frazier and not Oswald. By setting up Oswald, they guaranteed the whole world was going to spend 60 years looking into this guy's life. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they shot themselves in the fucking foot. I truly believe that Oswald was part of this dual identity transfer identity program and that they thought they were wrapping up a loose end. Because the real Oswald's out there fucking probably under the name Donald Norton. And so he's out doing his own thing. And so I don't think they could take a chance. Plus, I think he pissed them off when he brought Marina back because the Russians aren't stupid. They knew he was working for intelligence. So they sent a spy back with him. I think that pissed them. I think that caught them on the radar. But see, when was the very first indication that the they were setting Oswald up. The first thing I can find is in March, the ordering of the rifle, which is a total setup, right?
Yeah.
Fake money order, total fake everything, deposited before it was sent, the whole 9 yards. It's all fucked up, right? So that was in March, which means the plot was underway in March. The plot to frame Oswald was underway in March.
That's interesting.
Right. So see, some people link the assassination, like the green light, the final green light from the oversight board, which would be Permindex, from their spring meeting. Their spring meeting was in like February of 63, but I think that's cutting it way too close. So so I think that it had to have been before that. It had to have been in like late 62 that the plans really started to roll,
So you be the one to ask on this. Where do Ruth and Michael Payne, where do they play in this?
I don't really know. Her whole family is spooks. They're all CIA connected. Or all of them. Her dad was directly CIA. They're all CIA. It's a CIA family. And it seems like the CIA liked families for some reason. They seem to work with whole families. And the Oswalds, the Claveries, and the Moretts seem to be the proof of that.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
But one aspect of Ruth Payne that nobody talks about and nobody looks into, but I think I need to look into, is the relationship, if there was one, and I'm pretty sure there was, between Ruth Payne and Joyce Moret, who's the daughter of Lillian Moret. And the reason I say that is because Joyce and her husband, Emil O'Brien, are supposed to have lived in New Orleans their whole lives. However, Lillian, who is so stupid, she spills the beans during her Warren Commission testimony all the time. She tells a story about having Emil look up Marguerite in the phone book in Fort Worth because they were living there in Fort Worth, right? And so we have hidden from us, clearly we're not supposed to know that Lillian Moret's daughter and her husband were living in Fort Worth in late 58 and 59. We're not supposed to know that. Why are we not supposed to know that? I don't have an answer for you. But it's fucking sure as hell they were there and they were involved in something going on. And so to me, when you look at a picture of Ruth Payne and a picture of Joyce Moret, they literally could be twins.
Yeah.
Like everything. I mean, they're almost identical looking. And once I realized that these people are interchanging identities like they change their underwear, you know what I mean? Who the hell knows what other shenanigans were going on involving them?
That's crazy, man. That's just, I mean, the whole Truman Show aspect of it, but it's also like a Twilight Zone episode. And it's, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you could, but
see, and this is what is this that we're talking about? Really, 2 words: plausible deniability. The CIA does shit that when people talk about, they'll be like, they don't do that. That's crazy. And they count on that. That's their cover. So
that's crazy, man. When you mentioned the 2 Oswalds thing, I mean, it was right in front of my face the whole time. It's like what Kash Patel said. It's just right in front of your face. I mean, and we have it right there. But if we just don't look good enough. I mean, it just,
the Marguerite Oswald stuff is more egregious.
Yeah.
I mean, that Marguerite Oswald, the fake Marguerite Oswald, it's really fascinating because her first appearance that we can confirm is in 47 at 101 San Saba. There's some contradiction as to where Marguerite and Lee are living at this time, and John Armstrong did a magnificent job of determining that both the false Marguerite and Harvey Oswald lived at 101 San Saba for about 10 months in 47 before Marguerite and Lee lived there in the summer of 48. So they do this a couple times. They do this. I'm pretty sure they do this in the Bronx once, and they do this at 126 Exchange Place in New Orleans. And then after New Orleans, they go to the Collinwood address in Fort Worth. And that's where I'm at in my book. So in my book, it's called Lee Harvey Oswald in Black and White, Volume 1. I was only planning on writing about 225 to 250 pages because it's all documents and photographs and stuff. Like I explain everything and show the documents to back it up. But I'm on like page 225 right now.
Oh, wow.
And I haven't even gotten to the Marines yet. So This is looking like it's going to be a 400 plus page book.
Mm.
But right now, I'm at the point of 1955, 56. And this is where things get really weird because Oswald's on record as having gone to Beauregard Junior High School, right? He was there for a year and a half, right? But when you dig into the details, they did the same thing. Harvey Oswald was there for the first semester. And then for the next school year, 54, 55, Lee Oswald went there. And they both went there with the same fucking name. I don't understand this. And they had a friend named Ed Vabell who knew both of them. Ed Vabell died. His father thought he was poisoned at the age of 31. But still, like, and then you get into like, oh, when you get to the Marines, you get to the death of Martin Strand. That shit gets fucking wild. You know about Martin Strand?
Vaguely. I mean,
oh my God. That is going to blow your fucking mind when you dig into the real details on that. Because Martin Strand was fucking murdered. Straight up murdered. And Oswald was excluded from all the reports. It's wild shit. Like, we don't have enough, like a police report on something like that should be like 1,500 pages long. We have about 30 pages. So, you know, it's like, there's a lot missing from that stuff.
Yeah.
But this era of 55, 56, after Oswald allegedly leaves from Beauregard Junior High School, he's seen at Stripling in Fort Worth where he's not supposed to be. And he's living in a house, 2220 Thomas Place, which is a place he's not supposed to be because that house repeatedly pops up in the life of this fake Marguerite Oswald 3 different times between 47 and 63, where she's living at the time of the assassination. So we get all these like little incidental facts provided by witnesses. And something I'm very adamant about, if a witness provides details that are important and they don't understand the significance of those details, but those details are very important nonetheless, then you can guarantee that person's telling you the truth. Like if a cop's looking for a burglar in a red car and you go to a witness and the witness says, hey man, I just saw a guy go that way fast in a red car. That guy's telling the truth because you're looking for a red car and he saw a red car.
Right.
So
yeah,
you can determine who's telling the truth and who's not by not only that, but then you have to look for corroboration and other things. But for the most part, when people know shit they shouldn't know, they're telling you the truth. And that's how you can tell a lot of these statements from people are true. And so when it comes to Oswald being in various places, people provide certain details. Like I mentioned the other day, the house on Davenport that Robert Oswald will move into and buy in 57. Oswald was identified as having been there in 55 while he was attending Monig Junior High School in Fort Worth, where he's allegedly photographed in the class photo, which I have. So, right. So people provide details. They don't understand the relevance of. This guy named Tommy Brown provided the details about the house on Davenport, and he should not know about the house on Davenport. It's just, there's no reason for him to know about Robert Oswald's house on Davenport, but he does 2 years before Robert Oswald moves in there. This is fucking majorly significant. And this is what cops look for. I was a cop for a long time. I don't know if you knew that,
no.
but I was a cop for about 8.5 years. I was a crime scene investigator. I got a stack of degrees and training and thousands of hours of experience and all kinds of forensic stuff. So when people give you information like that, you can say 100% that it's true. Okay. So when I looked into that house ends up being owned by a guy in 55 named Joseph Summerfield. Joseph Summerfield happened to have been a lifelong, from the time he was 20 years old, member of the Freemasons and the Scottish Rite. The Scottish Rite was Guy Bannister's shtick in New Orleans. So that made me wonder if the secret societies play any part in this, because I've never considered that before, ever, because I think they're kind of stupid. They're recruiting mechanisms from what I can tell for the most part. But it seems like there might be a connection there. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go digging through that crazy world.
And that's crazy because everything it seems to be connected in one way or the other. It sounds like everything is. I mean, it's
right. And so when you have a situation like same thing with 126 Exchange Place, like we have letters postmarked from October 54 from Marguerite Oswald. She's not supposed to have lived there till June of 55. Okay. So we have weird contradiction stuff like this. And if you're going to have like multiple families named Oswald live there and switch out halfway, the landlord of the place has got to be in on the scheme. Right. Which tells me that these are like CIA safe house networks. You know, the CIA invests billions of dollars into American real estate through their venture capital wing today called Incutel. And so you think that's like a new practice? Fuck no.
No.
So how many millions of dollars was the CIA spending on real estate after 47? You know, because I have no doubts all of these people are connected to intelligence in one way, shape, or form, even if it is through a secret society. Because if you're a secret society guy, but you're just a normal landlord, but you got a CIA guy in your secret society, you know, that's where a connection is made. And of course, you're going to help your lodge brother out or whatever they call each other, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how you can, I think that's where I think that's the missing dimension, I think. some form of organizations where people are affiliated with intelligence, but maybe not intelligence themselves. And so that, I think, the secret societies could fill in that gap very nicely. So, but that's not an area of expertise of mine at all, because I've honestly like rejected the importance of that stuff for many, many years.
Right, right. And one thing I wanted to kind of make a mention of, and I know it's kind of a serious, or like not serious, a silly like theory, is that the CIA and their grooming process of like kids growing up to be CIA assets. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think 100%, because it all goes back to the CIA families, like Ruth Payne. You know, she might have been an active CIA agent. She was 100% an asset, giving cover to Oswald and stuff, you know? So, yeah, for sure. Even if that's all they do, right? Even if your connections and your into the secret world of intelligence is nothing more than providing a home for somebody for 6 months, you know, when you're, you know, in your 30s, right? So who the hell knows, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody's a super spy. Like, I don't even think that Oswald was a super spy. You know, like with the Russian defector stuff, I'm convinced that a lot of that was just, they send people over there just to keep the Russians busy. You know, they fucking generated thousands of pages on Oswald in Moscow and Minsk. And what did he do? He didn't do anything, nothing, right? So that kept them busy as hell. They had to set up surveillance on him. And how much of their resources did they spend, you know, wasting on these people who were false defectors who really didn't do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that's my point. That's a great point that you just mentioned, that they sent numerous defectors, like numerous people
Like
out there.
nonstop,
Yeah. And they would come back with either, you know, like you mentioned about Marina being a spy. You know, they would come back in this a lot of situations. I mean, I forgot the gentleman's name that was, he was linked, not directly to the Kennedy assassination. It was Robert. God, forgive me. He was sort of he was a clone like Lee Harvey Oswald,
Oh, Robert
basically.
Webster.
Yeah, Robert Webster. Kind of the same thing, that he went over there and he was living a pretty good life over there, and the KGB guys over there were just like, what the hell are these guys doing? You know?
She didn't he live in the same apartment building as Marina at a
Yeah,
time?
he did. Yeah, he did. Yep.
So
Yep.
you think that's coincidental? Give me a break. Like, there's no
No.
such thing as coincidence in history ever.
No, not with this case specifically. I mean,
Yeah.
and if people knew the full gravitas, just what it took to just murder this president in broad daylight, I mean, with all your backstory on this, it's just incredibly. I don't even think if people.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
If they wanted just to know what was going on with this, I think they would actually be sick to their stomach by how much detail and how much really spooky shit that's going on.
Well, the thing that really gets me, and this is like the most frustrating thing I ever have to deal with, is that the fucking information on David Ferrie and all the guys down in New Orleans and all the connections they have to the assassination have been there for 50 years. Nobody's pulling the trigger on it. And I don't know why. See, I found that many researchers are good at digging up dots. They're good at digging up data that has never been seen before. But the data needs to be correlated, and nobody's out there correlating data. They're just talking about the dots, and it's like, yeah, those dots are neat, but like, what do they mean? You know, connect them. And so it seems like people are just scared to pull the trigger on things. Like,
well, and then a very surface level like investigation all across the research, and also the people that want to know what is really happening. It really is surface level. You nailed it.
And so like to me, I'm still blown away. The Frank J. Chalona document is like the ultimate Kennedy document. I think it's the number one document of all time, because it's the document that debunks the whole Ferrie Winterland story. David Ferrie was seen Saturday afternoon in Hammond, Louisiana. You can't be in Hammond and be at the Winterland at the same time. So there you go. You have a story. His alibi story is debunked thoroughly, right? And then you have to explain where he was. And then where was he the night of the assassination? Oh, well, we have the answer to that. In the Garrison files, we have a document that basically says a grad student at the University of Southeastern Louisiana told the FBI that Ferrie hid out in Hammond the night of the assassination. So we have a document that says Ferrie hid out in Hammond the night of the assassination. We've got the document.
That's crazy.
So you got that, and then you combine that with the Frank Chilona document that he was there Saturday afternoon, debunks the whole alibi story, right? And so then when you go read David Ferrie, where was he on that trip? He can't even remember. And know what he says? He's like, I don't know where I was on that trip. You're going to have to go ask the FBI. Why the fuck you got to ask the FBI? Just tell us, you know?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is bunk. And then when you find the pictures of Alvin Bobouf and Leighton Martins in Dealey Plaza, it's like, oh, of course it was Leighton Martins, and Melvin Coffey is a nobody. They just use his name as an alibi. Why they were trying to keep Leighton Martin's name out of it, I don't know. But then when you're like, well, who went to the Winterland, right? Well, it was Sergio Arcacha. Look at the descriptions given by Chuck Rowland, whose name isn't really Roland, it's Rulon Rowland. You know, he's a spook married to Mary Boots. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. He's married to Joyce Rowland, but Joyce Rowland and Mary Boots Roberts are the same person. This is more spy stuff, more body double identity transfer operations going on at the Winterland.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a picture. I'll put it in the research chat. But
that's crazy. So to branch off that real quick, and I just want to talk about the document release in March, which is bullshit. I knew it was just going to be literally nothing, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. I mean, you're not going to get anything from that. They don't want us to get anything from it. They don't. I mean, it's a bunch of stuff that is going to lead you down back down dead ends. And you know, again, for the people that are out there that think they're going to get an answer with this, like full transparency. And that's why I have a problem with, you know, the Bondies of the world and Luna. I feel like, you know, again, and to touch on that, which really kind of makes me irritated, is that Congress doesn't take it seriously. They had, what, 5 members in the last hearing? And, you know, I think for guys like Dr. Curtis and Abraham Bolden, I mean, you got to give them more respect than that.
Yeah. A lot of people put a lot of weight into the medical evidence. And again, I think that's a big waste of time. All that's going to show is that there were more than one shooter. That's it. That's what you're going to get out of it. And so we know that already, right? So I could care less about revelations we get that tell us stuff we already knew. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So we have a document that says something that we already knew, right? You know, like it doesn't get us any closer to anything.
Right.
So the documents are a total red herring. The best of the documents are already out there. And like I think I've said this to you before, but like when it comes to the Oswald stuff, we're missing more documents than we have. Like you can tell when you start comparing the school records and the inconsistencies and how Robert Oswald said that he went to PS44 in Manhattan, but the school records say he went to PS44 in the Bronx, right? And so you have all these weird contradictions. So,
yeah, and I just got a brain fart myself, but I was just what was I gonna? It was something really poignant, but I like
it'll come back around.
But yeah. Anyways,
but anyway, the story of Oswald is a separate story from the assassination, and honestly, to me, I'm way more fascinated by the life of Oswald, because
okay, I know what I was going to say. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, his files that he had on Oswald, how they disappeared, and I know that's a real key in this whole thing of what he had on Lee.
Who Angleton?
No, Guy Bannister.
So Guy Bannister. I was just reading about this actually like a day or two ago, where Guy Bannister's files went, and they ended up getting picked up. Fuck, I forget the guy's name who picked him up, but it was like, holy shit, why is that guy picking up Bannister's records? It was somebody whose name who you wouldn't expect to be in this part of the story, you know. And then from there, they make their way to the state police. So the state police ended up with Bannister's records. We don't know what was in them. But see, like I said, that's what I consider a pothole. You know, there were documents, but they're gone. I consider it a pothole. And so,
but Bannister had stuff on Lee though. Like he had specific files on Lee though. Is that right?
Well, that's the rumor, but you have to take the little bits of data that we have. So we have the incident where Oswald's out on the street corner, and then who was it? Delphine Roberts comes in to Bannister and says, "Hey, Lee Oswald's handing out these flyers on the street corner. And then Bannister says something along the lines of, "Oh, it's okay, he's with us," right? He says something along those lines. Yeah. You have many sightings of Oswald at 544 Camp Street. I don't believe that for a split second. Once you realize that Kerry Thornley's impersonating Oswald, and that Kerry Thornley has the direct connections to Martin McAuliffe and Kent Courtney and Guy Bannister and all these fucking guys. So Kerry, this is great. Kerry Thornley gets to New Orleans in February 61, instantly goes and works with like 3 different CIA guys. Kent Courtney, who was like an ultra right-wing propagandist, Martin McAuliffe, who connects him to Guy Bannister, and then Guy Bannister, right? So like the first 3 big connections he makes before the summer of 62 are all CIA guys. So give me a break. Kerry Thornley, clearly CIA. I got way more on Kerry Thornley. That will be out in a book at some point. But so I don't believe that Oswald ever interacted with any of those people. I believe he was very specifically handled to do very specific things. And if we don't have it on film, it wasn't Oswald. That's basically how I look at it. All the things that Oswald did that made him look like a communist just so happened to be caught on film. Really? Give me a break. So, and then when you look at how he got on WDSU in New Orleans, okay, the chain of events that got him on TV goes from William Gaudet, who's a CIA total fucking employee of the CIA who ran Latin American propaganda, and he knew all the Cubans and all the spooks in New Orleans. He knew everybody, and so he sees Oswald out there, and this is his story. His story is he sees Oswald out there on the street. He calls Jesse Core, who's a close associate at Clay Shaw, works at the Trademark. He's the PR guy there, and then Jesse Core calls John Corporan. That's who it was. So, and John Corporan, I got another story I'll tell you connecting to John Corporan. So John Corporan is the guy who works for WDSU. He gets Oswald on TV. Shortly after he gets Oswald on TV, he gets a big promotion to New York. He becomes a news guy up in New York. Big promotion. Mm-hmm. So John Corporan, when David Ferrie gets arrested after he goes and meets with Garrison, and he gets arrested by Garrison, he's put in the jail cell, and he's waiting for FBI and Secret Service to come interview him. John Corporan, for some reason, is given access to Ferrie's cell. And he talks to Ferrie directly. He's the first person to talk to Ferrie after Ferrie got arrested. And John Corporan was the guy who got Oswald on TV. And then when you look at the phone calls made from the Allen Motel in Houston, the motel they stayed at allegedly when they went to the Winterland, the phone calls made from there to WDSU and WSHO, those were connections to Kerry Thornley, right? And so to me, it's all obvious. It's all obvious. All these guys were connected, all connected through WDSU, which connects to Walter Sheridan, which connects directly to the CIA in New York and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So it all makes perfect sense. Like it was a setup from the jump. Everything they did to get Oswald, Kerry Thornley put the flyers in his hands. William Gaudet got him on TV through John Corporan and the whole chain I just explained. This was all a fucking CIA creating a legend. That's all this was. That's all Oswald was doing his whole life. Part of a legend creation system. So
yeah, I mean, and his body language, I told you in the notes I was going to talk to you about his body language when he or whoever that was, I don't, who knows with this story. I mean, my mind's blown about everything. When he was talking to the media, you could look in his eyes, like, I mean, he just had this kind of calm look about himself.
He knew the deal because he was close enough connected to know he got fucked, and he knew. And I have a feeling once he got arrested, he probably looked back at certain incidents that he thought were fishy. And
find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
It all made sense to him. It all fell into place once he got arrested. I have a feeling that was how he felt about it. So I don't have any evidence Oswald did anything. Like, he didn't go to Mexico City. He didn't fucking do nothing. Like, none of the things that he's attributed to going to the shooting range, like none of that stuff. Oswald is alleged to have taken a course, a typing course in Dallas in like 63. But when you go and read the interviews of the woman who taught the course, she was surprised how dirty he always was, and that he always had dirty fingernails. That ain't fucking Lee Oswald. Lee Oswald, you'll never see that guy with stubble or a beard or nothing. The guy got his hair cut like once a month. That fucking guy, he was so uptight about his appearance. That guy never would be caught dead in a million years with dirty fingernails. But guess who had dirty fingernails? Fucking Kerry Thornley. Because Kerry Thornley was so balls deep in this thing, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody from the research group there. They said that Thornley was the second Oswald in the movie theater. Is that right?
100%. So the story of Kerry Thornley shot Tip. And so Kerry Thornley, and you know this because of the relationship, and you have to trace David Ferrie from the Knoll to the Tippett shooting. And once you do that through 5 witnesses: Ed Hoffman, Velma behind the Knoll, and then you got Akilah Clemens, Frank Wright, and Doris Holan. All 5 of those people describe the exact same man with a black felt hat and a blue suit. All 5 of them. Akilah Clemens said he was kind of heavy, but he wasn't a very big man. This is David Ferrie. Velma said he had real heavy eyebrows. It's David Ferrie. Okay, so once you know it's David Ferrie, what Oswald lookalike in New Orleans did David Ferrie associate with? There's only one. It's Kerry Thornley. And then when you go back to the Perry Russo stuff, Perry Russo seems like a nutcase until you realize the man he saw at the party in September 24th, that was not Oswald. That was Kerry Thornley, because he describes him as a bearded beatnik. So he also, when you get deep into the Perry Russo stuff, you learn that Perry Russo had gone to David Ferrie's house, his apartment on Louisiana Avenue, about 3 times leading up to that party. All 3 times the roommate was there. He called him his roommate, and the guy was living with David Ferrie. Okay, definitely not Oswald. This guy had a big old bushy beard. He described him as a bearded beatnik. In the Warren Commission, he took Oswald's picture and he drew a beard on him. He goes, yeah, that's the guy right there with the beard, right? But when you look at the fine details of the day of the party, Kerry Thornley shaved his beard and he had whiskers. He was described as whiskers, so he had stubble. So clearly not Oswald. And once you realize that at that party, you've got David Ferrie talking about triangulation of crossfire and how they have to have alibis and how they have to be someplace where everybody can see them. And then that will connect directly to Frank Chalona's statement in Hammond, because Thomas Compton told Frank Chalona that Ferrie needed to be there so he could be in a place where everybody could see him. Almost word for word what Perry Russo said, David Ferrie said at the party in New Orleans. So once you understand this relationship between Kerry Thornley and David Ferrie, it's obvious who the Oswald lookalike at the Tippett shooting was, because the other person who was impersonating Oswald, number one, at the book depository, at the shooting range, and a bunch of other places. Once you realize the other impersonator of Oswald was William Seymour, and that William Seymour is currently over at the Tidy Lady Laundry off of North Clinton, he's like 8, 9, 10 blocks away from the Tippett shooting. He's no way he did it. So the only person left is Kerry Thornley. And then this makes perfect sense because of the phone calls from the Alamo Motel, the WSHO, and WDSU, who are both cutouts for Kerry Thornley, which Kerry Thornley mentions in his fucking 50-page affidavit to Garrison, by the way. So, like, I swear to God, that Kerry Thornley 50-page affidavit is the glue that seals it all together. He admits everything, his connections to Marcello and Gary Kirsten and all these guys. Brother-in-law is another guy who pops up in the story. So, it all revolves around New Orleans. You can start to put it together, piecing together the Perry Russo stuff, which will directly connect to David Ferrie and everything else. And then Ferrie's alibi, which was Alice Guidros and Carlos Marcello's lawyer, G. Ray Gill, gave him an alibi, and Regis Kennedy was as corrupt as the day is long, partnered with Guy Bannister in some of that Cuban stuff, So yeah, to me, here's the thing. It's like a puzzle, and a puzzle only goes together one way. And once all the pieces fit together and you don't really have any loose ends, I mean, it's pretty obvious what the picture is that you're trying to put together. And that's kind of where I'm at with the assassination. It's just everything fits like perfectly like a glove. I don't have any glaring things that stand out like that I can't really explain, except the one thing that I see I'm going to put on my agenda to get down to the bottom of. I'm leaning in the direction of the fatal headshot coming from Valenti from the tunnel, not from the grassy knoll. There's a couple indicators there. I need to do some more research, but I'm starting to lean in that direction.
I posted something today. It was off Vince Palomara. People can have opinions about him, whatever. But he posted something pretty fascinating. You are aware of that picture of the overpass there with that policeman standing. What is he standing on a brick? What is he standing on? He's looking over at a guy.
Oh yeah, that's Haygood. Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right,
so it is one of the most bizarre. I never saw that picture. Dude, this is just how lost I was. But I never saw that picture before today. That was the first time I ever saw that.
Okay,
Isn't that
so
crazy?
Haygood from there, he goes up there, and I'll tell you why he went up there. The Dallas police ended up changing his statements. He says, though, the official statement that is given from Haygood says that he saw what he thought was a policeman up there, so he went running up to go talk to him. That's what's in one of the reports from Dallas police. That is a fiction. He saw something that's captured in the Robert Hughes film. And I put the video link of my Robert Hughes Yiddish edits in the research chat, and it's in that video clearly. Haygood sees somebody dressed in an all black robe with a big pointy black hat like a witch. I'm not even kidding. You think it sounds crazy coming out of my fucking mouth. I swear to God. It's from my mouth to God's ears. It's the truth. He sees somebody up there in a fucking Jewish ceremonial robe, and he goes and arrests them. I have the footage of this in the Robert Hughes film. It's captured.
Wow.
It's captured in the background of the Robert Hughes film. This person is wearing what looks like the Wicked Witch of the West costume, and they're pulling away from Haygood. You see it clearly.
So what about the guy with the radio and then the storm drain?
I don't buy the storm drain shit is nonsense. Like nonsense.
Well, no, not about that. But there was a opening latch door that was next to that overpass area.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying that there was anybody in the storm drain specifically that shot, but just the fact that it could have been maybe a possible hiding area, or I don't know.
Possible. I mean, it sure is
anything's possible. This thing.
So, but I have just like Ed Hoffman says, I have David Ferrie just walking casually off, then being photographed on the pergola, then being photographed in the railroad yards, and then making his way back to the behind the book depository, where he is then seen by Velma, who calls into Coast to Coast Radio. I'm sure you've heard that phone call. That's the greatest fucking phone call ever. She gives so much perfect bombshell data that's accurate. Like, and like I said, she provided details on things that she wouldn't know unless she was right where she said she was, just like the stuff from Doris Holan. So you got Dale Myers, who's a total loser. Like, he's the number one. He's a fucking Oswald did it guy, but he wrote a bunch of books on Tippett. And whenever he comes across facts he doesn't like, he just tries to explain them away. And that's what he did with Doris Holan. He tried to explain away Doris Holan's statements, who clearly identified two men shooting Tippett, not just one, So,
wow.
But yeah, so I need to investigate the tunnel a little more, for sure. That's like on my to-do list. Although my to-do list is like fucking 100 pages long.
Oh yeah, and you're writing a book right now, and you've got yeah. So when you get to it, but yeah. So well, I want to pick this up again some other time. I want to. We'll do a part 2 of this sometime if you're up for
whenever.
it. Yeah, and yeah, because I know both of us we busy lives and stuff like that, and everybody listening, thank you so much. But if anything closing, I just wanted to make if I could have you close with comments, that'd be great there, Cory. That'd be but for me personally, you know, I, I'm really I think we need to get this damn thing just for me personally, I feel like we need to have this thing in stone when it comes to like the narrative of what it is. We may know what it is, when it comes to it as researchers, but I feel like there has to be a consensus about who killed their president. I mean, like it has to be mainstream, and will it ever get there? I don't know, but we really have to get that out there. And the way that that this stuff still ends up being suppressed is just it's not healthy for us, because I feel like we've been stunted since 1963. So hopefully we can get more headway as time goes on, and with people like you, Cory, you're making things happen. So I do appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So my work is like universally rejected by all the people who are the quote unquote experts. The only friend I have in that world is John Barber. John Barber is the only person who's friends with me who is from that world, but he couldn't deny it. Once he saw my research, he couldn't deny what I had found. And so, but I would love to be able to have conversations with these people. But even I did a show with Morley and like Larry Hancock and a couple other people, Ocelli, and like, I swear to God, these people don't want to know what happened. They just don't. They just don't want to know. They want to bitch about stuff. And where's the documents? And where's this? And where's that? And you didn't tell it. Shut up. Just shut your mouth. Okay. You guys have been doing this for like 40 years. You never solved a fucking thing. Like, I'm just tired of hearing from these people. And I'm really tired of these people being called experts. I mean, if I studied cars for 40 years and I still didn't know how an engine worked, people would call me a fucking moron, not an expert. You know what I mean? Like, so like all these people like James, like these guys have to work for the CIA because they can't be this blind. They can't be. It's just not possible. It's not possible. I mean, they are when you look at who's deflecting the conversations, it's these guys, you know? So, but no, the assassination is the most important event in American history. Everybody needs to come to understand it if we're ever to really heal as a nation, because we haven't. So,
Well, I appreciate it. And everybody listening, Charles, everybody that's out there listening, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll do this again, Cory, and I'll talk with you here on the research board. And everybody have a great night. Thank you so much.
cool.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.